We are driving this vehicle without a dashboard. The law is not before us. The specific provisions is not before us. And sometimes the devil hides in the details.
The need for private investigators is to serve the purpose of bridging the gap where agencies enumerated now by distinguished Senator Oshimole failed to do their work.
The effort of this private investigation is very complementary in many dimensions, and this will assist our businessmen in the area mentioned by the mover in terms of fraud prevention, insurance fraud, aviation, and many more, even in bank charges.
Investigations. And in the end, and I don't mean that he was the one responsible, that institution target individuals and agencies more or less for blackmail. And in the end, the federal government was so embarrassed that they had to be disbanded. I think that for this Senate to enact a law that will give a Nigerian to apply for a license and to be so licensed such that he can carry out investigation on anyone. I saw here to prevent fraud prevention. That is what EFCC and the police are about. Corporate fraud, any manner of fraud, whether corporate, individual. I think that it would be risky to license anyone to have the right to approach any one of us and ask certain questions because the law has empowered him so to do. It will just be a license for extortion, a license for blackmail, an unnecessary rivalry, and it will not be controllable. I think that if there was to be need, and I need to be persuaded that that need exists, to have private investigation, which is currently vested in about 3 institutions: the police, SIB within the police, DSS, and of course EFCC. All of these are charged explicitly.
Including ICPC.
Including?
ICPC.
Including ICPC. All of these are put in place. Thank you, Mr. President, for your very helpful comment. All of this exists for the one purpose: to investigate and, where convinced, to prosecute. For us to go beyond these institutions established by law with clear mandate as to what they can do and what they cannot do, and with clear provisions as to how they go.
My name is Senator Victor Ume, OFR. I represent Anambra Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, I rise to support this well-intentioned bill brought by the minority whip. I say so because the need for private investigators is to serve the purpose of bridging the gap where agencies enumerated now by distinguished Senator Oshimole failed to do their work diligently. The country will have opportunity to have independent investigators, because there are so many cases we know that have arisen, but they have been swept under the carpet by these agencies he expressed they're mandated to carry out these investigations. Mr. President, there are so many issues of murder that have been reported to the police, and the police has not been able to do any diligent work to investigate them, particularly when they go into it and see very highly connected people around it. They sweep it under the carpet. Nigeria cannot afford to proceed this way. From this bill, you can see that civilized nations of the world have private investigators. And what this bill is seeking to do is to regulate the standard of practice for those who will be licensed as private investigators in Nigeria. Not anybody who applies will be registered. One is that the authorities should be satisfied that the applicant who applies to be registered as a licensed investigator, private investigator, will have the credibility and the expertise, the wherewithal to help us to crack unresolved issues, particularly criminal issues. I don't think that my brother is right to say that we should shut down this bill. That is also unparliamentary. When a bill is before the Senate, nobody should say it should be shut down. You make your contribution for or against the bill based on facts and convincing reasons. So this bill is a very important bill. And I know that if we pass it in the end, you will see that where due diligence is applied in appointing people and licensing them to be private investigators, a lot of unresolved crimes and matters will be dealt with. Nobody will be able to cover anything anymore. The issue of Obla, which you alluded to, is just too outlandish to use it as an example.
He did not mention the name.
No, he mentioned Obla. He did. I'm in the chamber. So what I'm saying is that this bill, for all intents and purposes, is desirable. We should be able to support it and pass it. The licensing of these people should be able to regulate the conduct of people so licensed. It's not for witch hunting or somebody going to investigate anybody at his whims and caprices. The court can make use of the evidence produced by a private investigator, particularly when the authorities that are vested with these powers are not able to assist the court with diligent investigation reports. Thank you, Mr. President.
Represent Oshimole Senatorial District of Osun State. Sir, I want to start by commending the mover of this very important and very timely bill. And I want to lend my voice by seconding it as the right thing to be done in Nigeria at this very crucial time. Sir, this bill seeks to regulate the activities of private investigators. We know that these investigators are around and they have been doing businesses, whether we recognize them or not. But as a country that is moving in the right direction, it is very necessary and germane that activities be regulated and be licensed so that we can monitor their activities from day to day. The effort of this private investigators is very complementary in many dimensions, and this will assist our businessmen in the area mentioned by the mover in terms of fraud prevention, insurance fraud, aviation, and many more, even in bank charges. We have employed so many of them, but since the bill is just trying to regulate the activities of these private investigators, I think it's a right step in the right direction. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill for the second reading. Mr. President, I so support.
President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Munguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. This bill is apt and germane, especially against the backdrop of the avalanche of private investigators that we find across the nooks and crannies of the country. And they are performing very vital function in complementing the effort of our security forces and intelligence personnel towards nipping in the bud criminality and criminal activities. So it is good that such an important sector should not be allowed to go unregulated, because it portends very serious and potent danger if left unregulated, because it is going to be subject to abuse and even encroachment upon the fundamental human rights of citizenry. And then by regulating them, it is also going to go a long way in stamping out quackery in the practice of private investigators. So against this backdrop, I urge my colleagues to support the second reading of this bill with the spirit of light. Thank you.
President and my distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on the Private Investigators Bill, which seeks to provide a framework for the licensing and practice of private investigators in the country. It also provides for a system of regulation, control, and conduct of the practice so as to maintain professional standards. The bill was first read for the first time on the 23rd of May, 2024. Private investigators, according to Wikipedia, are persons who can be hired by individuals or groups to undertake investigatory law services. They often work for lawyers in civil cases. Many work for insurance companies to investigate suspicious claims. Others do background checks and due diligence and render many other services. Perhaps due to TV culture, private investigators are very often seen as glamorized independent investigators with fancy gadgets and dramatic flares for solving cases. Nevertheless, they are a vital segment of the civil and criminal justice administration and law enforcement across the globe. Private investigators could be used in various capacities. While some specialize in tracing, others specialize in technical surveillance countermeasures, which is the locating and dealing with unwanted forms of electronic surveillance. For example, a bug boardroom for industrial espionage purposes. This type of service is typically conducted by those with background in intelligence, counterintelligence, executive protection, and law enforcement. Other private investigators specialize in corporate matters, including anti-fraud, loss prevention, and internal investigation of employee misconduct, such as employment service violation and sexual harassment, the protection of property rights, and due diligence investigation. Some private investigators act as professional witnesses, where they observe situations with a view of reporting the actions or lack of them to a court, or to gather evidence in antisocial behavior. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, the practice of private investigators is well established in countries like United Kingdom, United States, Australia, Canada, etc. While some private investigators are former law enforcement agents, others are former military and intelligence personnel. The modern trend across the globe, however, is the need to have them licensed so as to maintain ethical standards. The private investigators play a vital role in providing investigative support services in a range of contexts. In some instances, they perform complementing police investigative responsibilities in support of diligent prosecution. Comprehensive regulatory structure is needed to check the tendency for unethical and unlawful behavior by practitioners. Private investigators come in contact with a lot of information and intelligence, and information trade is common practice within this industry. Unregulated access, use, and brokerage of confidential information may result in serious socio-economic and even political consequences. A legislative framework will provide much-needed clarity and consistency in regulation of the information gathering practices of private investigators. This will help to enhance capacity to access information relevant to investigation and also help protect privacy of citizens. The bill defines the scope of the profession, ensures standard, provide penalty for professional negligence, and prescribe offenses for operation without license, and encourage industry-based training to maintain capacity. The objective of this bill includes fraud prevention, detection, assessment, and resolution, corporate fraud and risk management services, insurance fraud and claims investigation, aviation accident and loss investigation, marine loss investigation, occupational health and safety incident investigation, witness location, and bail bond defaulters, etc. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, the Private Investigators Bill essentially seeks to professionalize the industry and has no financial implication. It establishes conditions for qualification and also regulates the practice of private investigation. The bill will ultimately protect the public from abuse or arbitrariness in service provision by private investigators. I hereby call on my distinguished colleagues to support the second reading of this bill.